Hello viewers, I am Mushahid Hussain from Pakistan with another episode of Global South Voices from the CGTN, which is China's global television network for the world. And Global South Voices is a flagship program of the CGTN, which presents a perspective through the lenses of the Global South, which is the world's majority. In today's episode, we look at President Trump's tariffs and trade war, which he has initiated and which has affected the entire global economy, especially the Global South. We will look at the implications for the Global South of President Trump's trade war and what are the implications, what are the possible responses, and the impact on China as well as the relationships between the Global South and China and combating this new challenge, which in fact is also an opportunity for providing a platform for greater collaboration on an issue which is common to the Global South. In today's program, we have a very diverse and distinguished panel of guests from different parts of the world. We have from South Africa, Dr. Yazini April, the Executive Director of the Global North-South Center. We have from India, Mr. Sudhinder Kulkarni, truly an icon and an intellectual who was a key aide to the former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who indeed was one of the great statesmen of South Asia. We have from Pakistan, Mr. Munir Kamal, an expert on China, who is also the Secretary General and CEO of the Pakistan Banks Association. And we have from Beijing, Mr. Einar Tengen, who is a senior fellow at the Taipei Institute and also the chairman of Asia Narratives Substack. Since you are in Beijing, Mr. Tengen, and Beijing is also feeling the fallout of the tariffs, I will start with you, Mr. Tengen. How do you view these developments? Because this trade war that has been initiated, it has affected the world. You have electronic goods being produced in South Asia that are affected, mineral exports from Africa, agricultural products from Latin America, you have the textile industry in South Asia. So the impact is global. So this initiative or this action of President Trump, how do you view it? And what do you see as the implications?
The issue here is that trade flows are like open-handed. Everybody tracks them. You can World Bank, IMF, UN, every country. So in essence, when you're looking at trade, everyone can see everybody else's cards. In Donald Trump's case, he's decided to try to convince people that it has a straight flush, an unbeatable hand. And based on that, he's bluffed the world into believing that he can impose unilateral tariffs, not on one or two countries, but on 180, including some penguins. I'm sure they're very much surprised. In any event, he's taken the wrong side. And unfortunately for him, it's less about the global pressure. I mean, when you put 10% across the world, and then you say, if anyone retaliates, I'm going to hike it up. Well, that's fine, except if you need the world. One out of every $4 spent in the United States is by consumers is spent on imported goods. So in essence, he is taxing his own people who prior to the election, 70%, more than 70%, felt that they were living paycheck to paycheck, that there was nothing left. So what you have is somebody who's bluffing. His bluff has been called. He's getting tremendous pressure at home. The markets are down. His polling is down. And, the news shows that he watches constantly are saying very bad things about him. This is very important to Donald Trump. But behind all of this kind of silliness, it's like you assigned a complex economic problem to an 11-year-old playground bully. Fact is that you cannot go forward by going into the past. This idea that the United States can prosper if it simply brings back industrialization is nonsense.
Thank you for your take on that. Now we go to South Africa to Dr. Yazini April. Dr. April, South Africa is a very key leader of the Global South, a member of BRICS, leader of Africa also. How has your country been affected by these tariffs, and how do you view the President Trump's trade war?
In terms of what the impact is in the Global South, I think that the challenge also is that the focus of the tariffs has really been on countries like Canada, the EU, the pushback with those countries. So you have your Global South countries kind of left out of the whole discussion, and they're the ones that when they say when the elephants fight, the grass suffers. So there have been the grass suffering. If you look at Sri Lanka, for example, it's now having to deal with the IMF and its debt. Trying to sort that out, because now, I mean, trade leads to growth. So now when you're having these tariffs in countries like Sri Lanka, it has an impact. And another thing is there's also the indirect impact, because, for example, if the EU puts tariffs on the US, the US, at the end of the day, a lot of its commodities are not 100% made there. The semi-raw commodities tend to come from the Global South. So it also impacts those guys who are going to sell, who are supposed to be selling their stuff to the US for the same production that would happen between the US and the EU. Even if you look at Africa, Trump has been, he's put minerals aside. He's very busy with the DRC right now. And actually they've become involved, and they're offering security in exchange for minerals. In South Africa is the same thing. The tariffs have kind of, the issue of minerals has been set aside. So he's still transactional in the process.
Thank you, Dr. April. And now we move to our friend in India. Mr. Kulkarni, I was struck by a very instructive and informative article, your op-ed you had. It's titled US-China Trade War, Standing Up to the Playground Bully. And I think that this article sums up the big picture. And you wrote that today's China is not yesterday's Soviet Union, nor is Trump's America the sole superpower. Anyone trying to push back the clock of history will get hurt. So, based on that perspective, how do you see Mr. Trump's this big, it's his boom or bust, his big initiative, which seems to be backfiring?
President Trump, he launched this tariff war and called it Liberation Day for the United States of America. Actually, it has turned out to be a nightmare day. It was a tariff war, a war using gunpowder, tariff as gunpowder. But that gunpowder is actually hurting the United States itself. And this, which is why this ill-conceived, hasty, erratic decision by President Trump and his wonderful advisors has had to be rolled back significantly within a few days. Now, it only goes to show the quality of leadership that the United States has today. And, as someone who is really an admirer of the people of the United States of America, I pity their future. What has happened to the moral stature of the United States? But let me come back to what this whole so-called war actually means. It is an act of bullying. The countries around the world can be categorized in three categories: those who bully, those who get bullied, and those who refuse to get bullied. Trump belongs to the first category, the country that bullies. And China belongs to the third category, country that refuses to get bullied. And it's because China has stood up that you see how quickly Trump has tried to change his own stance. 90-day pause for tariffs on all the countries in the world. It happened only because China stood up.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. Now we move closer to home. My friend, Mr. Munir Kamal in Karachi, Pakistan. How has Pakistan been affected by these tariffs, Mr. Kamal? And how do you see the future in terms of this tariffs and trade war on Pakistan and the global south?
Well, for Pakistan, it's very simple. We don't export much to the United States. I think the last year, and it's primarily textile goods, $5.61 billion. The reciprocal tariff imposed on Pakistan is 29%. The way I see it, our competing country, for example, for selling textile goods to US, Bangladesh, the reciprocal tariff is 37%. So our textile industry, in fact, can take a little bit of advantage here. So Pakistan is largely unaffected by this because, as simple as that, our trade volumes are very low. We don't trade much with the United States of America, so we can weather this storm. In Pakistan specifically, but if the world gets hit, if there is a recession because of this tariff war, then of course Pakistan is going to be affected. Now, when it comes to the real tariffs battle or whatever one can say, is between United States and China. And as Mr. Kulkarni said, China is part of those countries who refuse to get bullied. And there are good reasons why China of today refuses to. Number one, and Mr. Kulkarni also highlighted this, China today, maybe 10 years back it was a different story, but China of today does not depend on technology stack of United States of America. Every other country is, not China. They've covered the gap and they're doing very well. And because of this technology gap is not there between China, they can afford to play this game with a lot of confidence. Now, the other part. China has the most sophisticated tooling engineers on the planet. And not just sophisticated and advanced, they are in abundance. Mr. Tim Cook, a few years back in an interview said, the reason why they operate Apple is because China's sophisticated tooling engineers and the quantity in which they are available, nobody in the world can match that. In fact, he actually gave a statement saying, in United States, the quality tooling managers, we can barely fill a hall. In China, we can fill multiple football fields. Now that shows the sophistication of China. And where they are coming, the rest of the world, I guess primarily some of the Western countries do not understand that China's education system is producing these world-class engineers in abundance.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal. I'd like to ask Mr. Aina Tengan about that. Do you think that this pronouncement about bringing manufacturing back to America, is that going to be elusive, a distant reality, or a realistic possibility?
It's not realistic in the extreme. I mean, it's just no way it works. First, you have political risk. If the tariffs go away for any reason, for instance, Donald Trump leaves office and somebody else comes in who actually has the same economic policy, anything you've done in the meantime is going to be lost. But let's just look at Apple, for example. Well, in India, the amount that you would pay somebody to make an Apple phone is 33 times less than in the United States. In China, it's 1/5. So it's 20% of the cost. And in India, it's 3% of the cost of the US. So let's say you move anything to the US. They estimated that the cost of a phone completely manufactured in the United States, assuming you could get all the little bits and pieces, which actually come from China. So you're talking about trillions of dollars in years to make, to invest and then make factories in the United States. The cost would be 3 times what it is now. So that $2,000 high-end iPhone would be $6,000. I don't think people would be very interested in that. And you can apply that across the board. Now, there was this theory that the United States could leap ahead by automation. They'll get lots of robots working and you churning out things day and night, and you could reduce costs. Well, you still have a higher cost of investment. Land costs more. The labor and construction materials cost more. All your utilities cost more. So even though the idea of automating it sounds good, if the idea was that you wanted to create jobs in the United States, I don't know that creating lots of robots is going to accomplish that. So there's no way that it happens. And that's why you're seeing companies, while they're paying lip service to Donald Trump, throwing around big numbers that they're going to invest in the US, if you look closely, you'll find that this is all based on market factors and also the timelines, except for a very few cases, toys being one of them. What they're saying is that, well, by 2030, by 2030, one way or another, Donald Trump will be gone. So these are the kinds of things that industry is doing. They're just playing lip service to an ogre and saying, oh, yes, we're afraid of you, we'll do what you want, but it won't be verifiable.
Thank you. Mr. Kulkarni, these tariffs, who is bearing the brunt of this? It seems that ultimately there's a blowback. It's going to be also hurting the Americans perhaps equally, if not more, than the countries that are at the receiving end. And the allies are upset, the global south is alienated, and as Mr. Tengan said rightly, that even his own base, Mr. Trump's base, the right-wing Republican base, is losing confidence because of higher inflation, and they are seeing problems. So how do you view that there's this, as Mr. Tengan said, this silliness or erratic behavior? Is it going to be reversed, or you feel they'll stay on course for some time?
It is really going to hurt every country in the world, including the United States itself.
Yes.
As President Xi Jinping has said, that in this tariff war, there are no winners. If anyone thinks that they alone are winners and everybody must bear the consequences, everybody else must suffer, they're fooling themselves. This is because we are living in an era of economic globalization that cannot be reversed. What President Trump and his foolish advisors are doing, they're going against two important trends of history. One is economic globalization, the other is democratization of the world. The world is today more interconnected, more interdependent than any time in human history. All of us belong to one common humanity. As many other countries in the global south emerge, they become stronger economically, they become more self-confident, they assert their self-respect. It is going to become more and more multipolar. And in this world, every country, rich or poor, big or small, we are all equal because we belong to one human family. In a family, can we ever say that such and such a person is less equal than me because I am more in age or whatever reason? We are all equal. But the United States of America somehow doesn't understand the principle of equality. But it doesn't matter. If they don't accept, the world is not going to stop getting democratized. It is the responsibility of the global south countries, which actually account for 85% of the global population. Europe and America, they account for 15% of the global population. Their economic strength is going down. It is for the rest of us to become more united.
Thank you for that point. Coming to you, Mr. Munir Kamal, how do you see the prospects of global South cooperation with China and among themselves in the face of these new challenges, especially the protectionism and the tariff and trade wars emanating from Mr. Trump's administration?
First of all, we have to see the changing pattern of trade of Chinese export, because that's where the story of the South starts. in 2010, out of the total exports of 1.7 trillion, if my memory holds it right, the Chinese exports to United States were about 25%, I think almost $400 billion. Last year, out of a total exports of 3.6 trillion, again, I think it's about 11 or 12%. It has slipped from 24 or 25%. It's close to 500 billion. Significantly, the largest trading partner of China, or largest market for Chinese export today, are ASEAN countries. And as I said in my earlier comments, 118 billion exports to India. And India and China, collectively 2.8 billion. This is a very, very fast growing two countries from the South. And as I said earlier, and I'll repeat, full marks to the wisdom of the two leaderships of India, that despite the fact that they're not best of buddies for a long time, they're trading in big numbers and investment. I told you about Ant Financial's example. I also know about Tencent. They also invested in one of the companies there. So it is inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable for the South, led by China. I won't say led by China. That again, then it becomes a negative connotation. And China has not shown any sign that they want to lead the South or lead the world. They are doing their job in big numbers. Very, very sophisticated engineering talent has emerged. And by the way, let me tell you one thing. We were talking about the cost of Apple. Where is Apple shifting from China a little bit, or some portion of that? Not going back to the manufacturing in the United States of America, which seems to be the desired aim. It's going to India. So what is manufacturing of United States achieved from that? And I think more of Apple manufacturing will go there. And as Tim Cook once said, we are not in China because of low wages. We are in China because of the sophistication and advanced tooling engineering available to us, because the product they make is very, very sophisticated. And of course, we all know there is the engineering side of India is also developing very rapidly. The IIT's contribution worldwide is so clear. And that is why they're shifting. My point is, it's not going back to the manufacturing in United States of America.
Thank you for that. I think we all agree on the need for camaraderie among South Asian countries as part of the global South. Dr. Yazini, how do you see, from the African perspective, from the South African perspective, global South cooperation, which is much needed now in these challenging times when free trade is under threat and protectionism is being promoted by the United States through tariffs and the trade war?
I would suggest in the future that maybe China would consider having a FOCAC, not just a FOCAC summit, but a kind of a FOCAC secretariat that helps create a common position, for example, with China, Africa, to say in regards to tariffs. Because now there's no FOCAC voice in all of this. They're not with one tool. I'm just giving an example. Or the BRICS position. There's so there is no commonality. Now, another thing that we need to also address as the South-South, whether it's the ASEAN, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in Africa, is what do we mean by South-South trade? The West is very clear on South-South trade. They have already implemented their structures from way back after the Second World War in terms of resource. In fact, before the Second World War, Britain, it was busy there. They already had their value chains set up in many African countries, and through colonization, they set up where you would have their mineral resources exported to their countries. So they have implemented their structure of West-South trade. But we in the global South, we have not implemented a strong trading system amongst ourselves. We trade actually a lot more with the West still. And our infrastructure is still more geared. The trading, your value chains are still more geared towards the West, especially in Africa. Yes, in Asia, there's a much higher growth of intertrade. I mean, Africa is dismal, and hopefully the AFTCA will change things. So we need to deal with the issue of global trade among South-South versus global trade among South-North.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Einar Tengen, to you in Beijing, what we have seen, and I think that we have had a very productive discussion, that basically we all agree that this attempt by Mr. Trump to have the kind of American diktat on the global economy is a tried, tested and failed formula. So where does Mr. Trump go from here? Will he stay the course? What options does he have? Or will he reverse course or try to seek a deal with China and other countries? Your take on that?
What I was saying is that Donald Trump isn't going anywhere. He started off, he bluffed, his bluff was called. Beijing, as the adult in the room, has the responsibility of guiding him towards something that not only works for China, but for the entire world. Remember, he's going to be around for another 3.5 years. So what they have done is left some breadcrumbs. The first one was 2 weeks ago. They had a 6-point white paper plan where they spent one whole point talking about phase one. That was the deal where China agreed to buy a bunch of things from the United States. It was interrupted by COVID and also by Donald Trump's own actions and more trade tariffs, etc. Well, why mention that unless you're in essence signaling that you're willing to do a phase two? This would be face saving. Donald Trump could say, yes, this is what I was planning all along. But what it does is gives relief to the rest of the world. Precondition to that is that the tariffs have to come down, not only against China, but against the world. The IMF, U.S. did not pay its dues in 2024. It's probably not going to pay them when they're due in 2025 through the middle of this year, somewhere in July. That creates the ability, the U.S. cannot chair any meetings. So this also gives the ability for 3/4 of the members of the WTO to simply say to the U.S., you do not seem to want to abide by the WTO. You're blocking our internal mechanisms by refusing to allow appellate judges to be seated, which means that there can be no final judgment if a country appeals an initial ruling. And since you haven't paid, why are you even here? Hopefully, the U.S. will leave, and this will be the impetus for a real change that reflects the needs of the global South and the entire world. It's not about creating entrenched interests, South versus North. That's how we got into these problems. 600 years of colonialism where they said we're superior and you simply bow to our needs. We need to go back to some sort of rationality where civilization, as opposed to empire values, are in fact put in place.
Thank you so much. And we should not forget, when we are having this discussion in 2025, that this is the 70th anniversary of the Bandung Conference, which was organized in April 1955 in Indonesia, which laid or sowed the seeds of the global South. And I think that the spirit of Bandung still permeates the countries of the global South in their quest for unity, solidarity and camaraderie to protect, preserve and promote their sovereignty in the current context. Well, many thanks to all our guests. We come to the end of our show today, and you can also find us on CGTN app, on X, on Facebook and on YouTube. I am Mushahid Hussain. Until we meet next time, stay tuned to Global South Voices, which is the flagship show for the CGTN, and listen to a perspective that reflects the world's majority living in the Global South. See you next time.